Good morning. It is Saturday morning. I woke up today and I thought today is the day. I was going to have a day off, but I thought no. Today's the day to talk about Strats and start the whole vlog journey that I kind of promised that I would deliver. In some ways, to quote an old song lyric, it's over before it's begun, because as you'll know from watching TPS videos, if you watch TPS videos, my favourite guitar, the 62 reissue American Vintage, is back. It's been refretted and, well, it's stopped the search in its tracks in a way. But I thought, why not? Seeing as there's been a journey, let's document some of it, and that will come in a few parts. I'm going to give a bit of context to my Strat journey to date, because I think it will chime with a lot of people. Secondly, I've got 4 guitars over there on the bench behind me. The gold McMull, blue, my John Mayer signature Strat, and the PRS Silver Sky, and I'm going to play those and do a bit of A/B testing to just let you hear how they sound in the same context. Then I'm going to swap the bridge out on blue for a Callahan True Vintage bridge. I'm also going to swap the pickups out for some Fender Custom Shop Fat 60s. Or we'll get into that when I do it. I've also got, just for fun, some things like aged plastics, pick guards, knobs, switches, pots, and some capacitors here somewhere as well. Right, rewind. When I was 14, my dad bought me this guitar, which was quite something, because when you're 14, kids in my neighbourhood didn't have Strats. It was an unusual thing. So it's what was it? It was a 70s Japanese Strat reissue. I'd fallen in love with it because I'd seen the cover of Live Alive with Stevie Ray Vaughan, and I was getting massively into Stevie Ray Vaughan around the age 14. And on the cover of Live Alive, he's got this kind of, I think it's cream. It's a cream Strat. It looks cream in the picture. It could have been Olympic white, but I'm pretty sure it's cream. And that's what I wanted. I went into the local music shop, Rock and Pop Music in Yeovil in Somerset, and just lusted after this Fender Strat because it was that colour. And my dad, bless him, bought it, my mum, for Christmas that year, and I was beside myself. I simply couldn't believe that they'd done this thing for me. And that was it. That was the beginning of the Strat journey. What I realised over the next 25 years is that there were some things about that guitar that was not the same as other Strats, and or at least Strats that I really loved. So I guess starting from when I started on Guitarist magazine was about 22, I started digging into Strats a bit more. That was 1997. My God, 22 years ago nearly. And I'm still learning things about Strats today, and I think probably the most I've learned about Strats has been in the last 4 or 5 years, in terms of what I like, what I don't like, all the rest of it. So before we go forward, I just want to take a moment to reflect on this. This is where it all started. It is so heavy. You can see that I've tried to drill it out to make it lighter, because it just, what I discovered is that it sounded very dead as a guitar. Bless you, Dad. The trem wouldn't bend down far enough, so I routed out the back of the cavity there. Little did I know it was actually the arm that was bending. I replaced the pickups, the pots, and for anyone that says I'm a massive old technophobe, check that out. You will recognise what that is. That's a cutout for a GK2 pickup Roland MIDI synth thing. So I carved my initials in it using an angle grinder, because Stevie Ray Vaughan had his initials on his guitar. I stole this sticker off a train on the way back from London. It says press floor stud to flush, do not use in stations. And it made me laugh because I read it as press floor stud. Anyway, so it made me laugh, so I stuck it on there. Troy Lee Designs sticker, an old Ernie Ball sticker, and a glow-in-the-dark star here, as you can see. And I played the crap out of that guitar for years and years and years, until I realised actually it didn't sound anywhere near as good as some of the later Strats I got to play. So okay, that's the background. Let's get into this. Right then, as promised, the 4 guitar comparison. Bit of housekeeping before we begin. My favourite amp, 2 Rock Classic Reverb Signature, set fairly noisily. Got 4 pedals on the board. Dunlop Eric Johnson Fuzz Face, Full Drive FD1, the new one from Full Tone, Thorpe Effects the Dane, hello Danish Pete. Actually, I can honk Eric Johnson as well. And a Dunlop Echoplex. All the guitars have the same gauge of string. They are Kurt Mangan 10.5 to 48. And they're all about the same age. Had a little bit of playing, so they're not like kind of packet fresh. Pickups are all adjusted to pretty much the same height. I mean, I haven't got the ruler out, but just looking, they're kind of there or thereabouts. You're going to hear 4 sounds on each guitar. I'll do them in turn, and I'll try and play the same thing each time, if I can remember. First one's just going to be the amp on its own, volume full up. Okay, I may as well react as we go, actually. Interesting. So the amp is breaking up a little bit, and that's done deliberately just to see where the edge of breakup for the pickups is. The PRS is definitely, to me in the room, is pushing that the hardest in terms of gain. So let's try something else. I've just knocked down the gain in the amp a bit. I'm going to go to position 4 and play the slow dancing thing, because I think that's an interesting test for a Strat-style guitar. Interesting. So from where I'm sat, be good to hear the audio back. The 2 John Mayer guitars, unsurprisingly, the Silver Sky and the John Mayer Signature Strat, seem to have that slightly dippier position 4 thing going on clearer. I do wonder if the strings on the Silver Sky are a day or two older than the others. The bottom string sounded a little bit more rubber bandy. But in terms of those in-between sounds, I thought hearing it there, the two John Mayer guitars nailed it the best. I'm going to just play this once more just because I am. Yeah, Blue seems to sound a little more throaty in comparison to the other two, not quite as clear. And the McMull, don't know whether it's because they use Arnico 3 or whatever, but it seems to be the weakest of the bunch, which is not a pejorative assessment. It seems to have the lowest output. Right, let's move on. I've tweaked the gain up on the 2-rock a tiny bit, and I've put it into one of the slightly gainier modes, so we're now at this. Just sounds mega, and I'm going to throw in some full drive on top of that. So, and I'm going to play that Stevie Ray intro lick that I always play because I think it's a good sound for this. Okay. What's more interesting to me than the sound at this point is how difficult I'm finding it to switch between guitars. So if you give me 5 minutes on any guitar, and it's be the same for you too, you get familiar with that guitar and it starts to flow under your fingers, and I was struggling there. The PRS for me is the hardest to play. It's got the lowest action, especially down by the nut. I don't know whether the nut is wider, but it's definitely the hardest to play. It feels, I mean, this has a 7 1/4 inch board, as does the McMull, I think. I don't know, I need to check that. The PRS definitely has a 7 1/4 inch board, but it feels the most curvy, and that might be because when this was refretted, Johnny cambered it off a bit. But I think when I saw him put the radius on it, it was more or less 7 1/4. Anyway, yeah, interesting. Okay, let's move on. Going to play something with a fuzz. I've changed the settings on the amp ever so slightly. I've taken it from the second highest gainy mode to the lowest gainy mode, and on its own the amp now sounds like this. Pretty sweet. Then with the fuzz. Super interesting. I'm trying to do that thing which is impossible, which is listen and play and try and play something and listen at the same time. As you can tell, I'm struggling to switch from guitar to guitar, and the PRS I'm definitely finding the hardest to play. I think it might be a combination of low frets and low action, which I find tough. One thing I've really noticed about Blue since it's been back is with a bit more relief in the neck, higher action and bigger frets, I find it way, way, way easier to play. Okay, for the final sound, I've got the full drive. Here's the amp. I'll put the full drive on and the Dane together with all 3 gain modes on and the Echoplex, just for a bit of mayhem to see what happens next. Right, here we go. Wow, okay, way too much gain on that. But what's interesting about that is how the guitars hold on to all that gain, which is, too much. Maybe. Sounded like the PRS held on to it the best to me, maybe because of the pickups or whatever. But I don't know, I've blasted myself to bits. Hard to be objective in this light, so I think we'll draw that little comparison to a close. No doubt about it, the guitar I'm most comfortable playing is blue because I've been playing it all these years, and it'll be interesting to see what the bridge and the pickup swap brings to all that. I'm not going to go through the 4 guitars all again with the changes, it'll just be the changes with blue. But okay, hope you found that interesting. Range of sounds heard through a nice amp at plenty of volume. Yeah, let's go on to the next thing. What are we to make of all of that then? Right, so I've just finished playing, you've heard the results. I've just mixed the audio, did it straight away. Well, actually, I gave myself half an hour, had a little bite to eat, and started at about 9 something this morning. It's now 2 p.m. I'm sorry I keep looking up. I keep looking up at the monitor that's above the camera to check focus. I'm just going to stop worrying about it now. I'm in the process of buying a lens that will autofocus on my face, but blimey, lenses are expensive. I've got Sean Colvin keeping me happy. Sean Colvin keeps me happy. Right, what are we to take from all of this? Why did I get into this in the first place? I got into this in the first place because blue was really not inspiring me anymore, and I found that heartbreaking and difficult to deal with. And it turned out it was because the frets were so worn. There was just nothing ringing off the guitar. It sounded flat and dead to me, and it was hard to play. So I took it and I got it refretted, and you can watch that vlog which Dan made with Johnny and the refret, and the guitar has come back transformed. Nevertheless, there's still all these questions in my mind about all the guitars that I played along the way, and the 4 that have been the contenders are the ones you've just heard. Why did I choose those and not something else? Well, the John Mayer Strat I already own, the PRS Silver Sky, because I was intrigued by that guitar being such a John Mayer fan, and also PRS off to semi one to muck about with for a while, and actually it's leaving me today and it's going off to Mary Spender. Hello Mary, if you ever watch this. Thirdly, Tal from McMull got in touch and said, look, I think I can help you with the whole Strat Journey thing. Why don't you try one of our S Classics? And I was straight up with Tal right from the beginning, and I said, look, my wife's just texted me. Please can you bring the new milk from the fridge home? That's what happens when you live in the office. Put that on airplane mode. And I said to Tal right from the beginning, you know, I'm a Fender person, and Fender is in my blood and it's in my heart, and I love Fender with all my heart. And so to play any other brand is going to be really tough for me. And he said, yeah, I get that. We love Fender too, but you should try one. So, okay. And of course, everybody else watching this, so one of the questions I get all the time, why didn't you try a Sir? Why didn't you try an Anderson? Why didn't you try all these? And the answer to that is all of those guitars. So my Strat Journey, I've had, what have I had? Strats, I've had bolt-on neck PRSs, briefly had an Anderson, played absolutely everything during my time at Guitarist, have been in the great fortunate position of playing pretty much everything. And what I find about new guitars is they are a step away from what I want, not towards what I want, and what I want is a vintage Strat. I played a lot of vintage Strats in my time. I'll just cut in a bit of footage now. I nipped down to Vintage and Rare in Bath, and they happened to have a couple killer Strats in, and I played them, didn't record them properly, just literally on the iPhone, so that's what you'll hear. But right then, so the Strat journey continues. I've come to Vintage and Rare Guitars in Bath. This is Tucker, who's been kind enough to pick a couple of very cool things off the wall to try. This is 64 candy apple, and as you see it's got silver underneath there. Some of them had gold, some of them had silver. One of the things that's really hit me about this guitar is there's just something about the taper on the neck, so they're quite thin down here, front to back, and then they get thicker up the neck. Some custom shop guitars do that, but not very many newer ones do it. Anyway, so let's have a quick plug in and a quick blast. One thing that's knocked me out is just how bright the bridge pickup is. So here's this pickup. So that is 64 with grey bottom pickups. This one, which I'm going to have to be super careful of because it's this is an original Fiesta 62, but it didn't get a top coat, so the finish is super would come off if you touched it too much. So we're back to 62 black bottom pickups. Oh my god, that's a different thing already. Master. That's good. It's funny, you feel a bit nervous because it's obviously a very valuable vintage guitar, and you're just going for the switches you normally would. You feel a bit nervous going for it and everything, but oh my god! Thanks guys, this doesn't help.
No problem.
Oh my goodness, there is something... I use the word visceral a lot, and there is something in the imperfection, in all the things that are ironed out in modern guitars. So, you know, perfect finishes, bridges that work, all that stuff. And so when you get to your Suhrs and your Andersons and stuff, they are amazing guitars. They are utterly amazing guitars, and lots of people love them for very good reason. But I don't. And that's usually because of the finish. So usually it's a modern poly hard finish. And I like nitro, I like the way it feels, I like the way it looks, I like the way it cracks, I like the way in 10 years time it doesn't feel like a hard poly finish, it feels like an integral part of the guitar. I like 6-point bridges. I cannot play the 2-point bridge. Sorry, loads of people in the world can, I just can't. I can't deal with it with my right hand. When I bend, all the other strings go out of tune, and when I hit a chord hard, everything goes out of tune. Some players use that as part of their playing, you know, they like the warble effect, but I don't. I like the 6-screw bridge. I think it needs to be flat on the body of the guitar for proper tone transfer. And when I say proper, I mean traditional Strat. And that is the whole point. If I had 15,000 quid, believe me, tomorrow I would go out and I would buy a 62, 63 in reasonable condition. Maybe, you know, the very best of the refins. But yeah, I'd buy something in reasonable, and I would spend that money in a heartbeat on one of those guitars, because the ones I played have just lit me up in a way that a lot of new guitars just don't. And that's not to say they're all good, because they're not. There are some real old dogs in there. But let's move on. So why didn't you choose a Suhr? Why didn't you choose an Anderson? Why didn't you choose my guitar that I love and I play? Because these were available to me and I was looking for a very specific thing. It reminds me, sat in there doing that things like blind listening, things like A-B comparisons, things like that are utter folly. All I'm thinking about is trying to play the same thing 4 times and failing. And so I'm never really getting into the guitar and never really connecting with it. And also switching between the guitars one after one like that is really tough, because you don't get any time to just go, oh yeah, okay, that's that neck shape. And your body, you don't get the muscle memory to stick with it. So hopefully out there in YouTube land it will be useful. I listened to the audio and what did I hear? A bit more confusion in the sound than I thought. It was blooming loud in there, and the 2-rock's quite hard to record loud. And I liked each of the guitars for different reasons. There were elements where I liked the McMull best. It was clear, it was had a lot of string definition, it wasn't overpowering. The Silver Sky with the high gain certainly held on to that gain a little better and got a little less confused. Seemed to me that my guitar probably is quite thick in the mids, which can be great for some things and less good for others. The John Mayer Strat had quite a lot of clarity, I thought, and certainly those in-between positions are definitely more mid-scoopy than some of the other guitars. So yeah, I draw your own conclusion, and I think you could make an equal case tonally for owning any one of those guitars, and you may well like one more than the other three. And I'm not sure. There were some sounds where I didn't like the sound of my guitar at all, but the connection I have with that guitar, I can't let it go. I can't deny it. So, sorry, other three contenders. The John Mayer Strat is mine anyway, so that remains my second guitar. And I think I might get Johnny to have a look at it. But anyway, that's another thing. The Silver Sky is going to go off to Mary Spender. Cool guitar, but again, not really, doesn't do the vintage Strat thing for me in the way that I want it. And the McMull is a fantastic guitar, which brings me to the next set of discussions that are important to me about the guitar. That is how it looks. There are 3 rules. It's often said there are 3 rules to why you should get a guitar: what it looks like, and what it looks like. And I'm a sucker for that because I like things to look old. So I think what we'll do is we'll bring this section to a close. There's a couple of things I want to point out. One of the reasons I love vintage guitars, one of the reasons I want a vintage Strat, is there are some things you just can't unsee. For example, have a look at these inside the back of the trem cavity. This doesn't make any difference to sound whatsoever. Or does it? In old Strats, you'll notice that the bridge is slightly offset. And the block doesn't sit square in the thing. It's quite an easy way to tell one way to tell a vintage guitar from a modern one. Not some of if you're going to fake a guitar, you'd probably make sure you got things like that right. And everyone tells me that the pick guard doesn't sit square in the lower horn. And I've been looking at old Strats, and lo and behold, quite a lot of them sit, as you look at this image, sit to the left. So it sits slightly higher. Now, I've looked at just as many old Strats and they seem to sit in different places, so I don't know about that. But once you see those things, and those are just 2 tiny examples of things that you can't unsee on a vintage guitar that you want your modern guitar to have. The final one is the necks. I don't know why the Fender Custom Shop does it this way. I don't know why, with respect, other aged guitar makers, Tal included, do it this way. The modern necks on relic guitars don't look anything like vintage guitars. A vintage guitar neck is shiny and it's got a deep, lustrous colour depending on how much lacquer there is left on it. So some stuff like that you just can't unsee, and these may seem infinitesimally boring details that don't matter to tone at all. I come at it from Analog Mike's point of view, and part of me believes that every tiny little thing matters. So, guitar forums with much more knowledge than me, with much deeper, willingness to argue about it, will go on at length about all of this. I'll get roundly criticised for having some of these views, but it's my view and it's what I want in my guitar. So, we'll draw this one to a close. Those are the 4 guitars that were in the running, just to get my head in the right place about what I might want to do next with the guitar. And on top of that, I played some vintage ones. We are going to go to ATB Guitars in Cheltenham and play some proper oldies, but I said at the top of this video that it was over before it begun. The second I picked up those Strats in Vintage and Rare in Bath, it just reminded me about all the great vintage Strats I've played. It was like, there's kind of no other way to do this. I will buy your Mike Landau Strat if you're watching this. I will buy it off you, because that's a different thing, and I would love that guitar. God, the price is going up and up. But in terms of a replacement for Blue, probably not. Okay, that's part one. Part two will be, what am I going to do next? I'm going to replace the bridge. This is a Callahan True Vintage bridge with a cold rolled steel block and the virtual pop-in arm. I'm probably not going to film that today because, quite frankly, some friends of mine are having a Christmas drink this afternoon and I wish to join them. So yeah, okay, that's part one. Hope you found that interesting. Get the comments in. So far, part two is going to be, I'm going to change the bridge. Part three is going to be, I'm going to change the pickups and talk about plastics. I'll go into this in more detail in part three. This is a Callahan aged vintage Strat pickguard. I think the focus plane is about there. Yeah. This is a Crazy Parts.de true vintage proper celluloid one. So this is made out of a modern plastic and aged to look old. This is a proper celluloid nitrate one, which is what they were made out of from 59 to 64-ish. And why they go green, and it's got the correct thicker mid-level there, mid-black level, and the correct bevel, and it is just a lovely thing that's going to go with these aged pickup covers for these pickups, which are going to go in the guitar in part three. Right, I'm yakking. Hope you enjoyed that. It's part one of Mick's Strat vlog journey, and you know you're in trouble when you start referring to yourself in third person. So I bid you adieu. Have a great day. See you soon.